Much for coming. I just want to say welcome. It's a great getting up morning. We have a fantastic discussion here. And yes, as Ben said, this is a news day and the news just fell out. And we got to roll with the punches. Thank you so much, Cierra Hinton and also Jiquanda Johnson. We really appreciate that you're here and lending your talent and expertise to this. Philip Smith, of course, is our host and the reason for the season with Google, and also Erika. We thank you so much. And Ben Arnon, my co-founder at Color Farm Media, we're glad to be in partnership with you. And we thank you so much. I won't talk, longer than I need to, but, just let me know. I'll be watching, monitoring the chat, and Ben will come in a little bit later and tell you a little bit more, do some house cleaning after questions or just before questions. And thank you so much. Take it away. Jiquanda, y'all pick. See you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jiquanda Johnson. I am founder of Flint Beat. We're a hyper-local news site located in Flint, Michigan. We kicked off in 2017, and so we've been covering the community since then, and it's been nonstop.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cierra Hinton. I am the executive director publisher of Scalawag magazine. We are based in Durham, North Carolina. And we are a Black-led, women-run nonprofit journalism and storytelling organization that illuminates distant, unsettles dominant narratives, pursues justice and liberation, and stands in solidarity with marginalized people and communities in the South. We're so excited to be joining y'all today and are here to answer any questions that you have about starting your own newsroom or media organization. And yeah, Jiquanda, I will pass it back to you if you want to just tell a little bit about your story and how you came to found Flint Beat.
And sorry, Jiquanda, I'm just going to step in. I think Tiffany is here. Tiffany, on your screen, it actually says Philip Smith. So you might want to, if you can change the name.
I don't know how to do that, and I don't know why it says Philip Smith. That's very strange. I don't know who Philip Smith is.
He's on the call. That's why it does.
Oh, okay. Hi, Philip Smith. I'm happy I didn't say anything bad about Philip Smith.
Good to meet you, Tiffany.
So on the upper right, there should be three dots. And if you click on that, it should have a thing that says rename.
Oh, see it. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize for my tardiness. For those of us who are covering this campaign, this is very challenging timing because we're all trying to write and file. So apologies for being late and distracted.
We understand and we know, and everyone's already in the, in the pocket with you. So you do your thing, Tiffany Cross.
Am I supposed to introduce myself? Yes, okay, sorry everybody. Hi, I'm Tiffany Cross. I founded a news platform, The Beat DC. We have since shut down, but I took all the research I did from that and wrote an amazing book, Say It Louder, if I can shamelessly plug, Say It Louder, Black Voters, White Narratives, and Saving Our Democracy. It's a book that Oprah calls one of the best books ever. I'm kidding, that's in my dreams that she says that. It talks things into existence, Anyway, I hope you all read the book because it talks about the challenges of founding a news platform, being a woman of color. So happy to be included. Thank you so much, Erika and Ben, for pulling this together and for having me.
Thank you.
Oh, is it back to me now? As I said, Flint Beat was launched in 2017. So we just hit our 3-year anniversary, March 13th. But our story is a little different. I was working for a legacy newsroom at the time, and they were making some changes in how they did coverage in order to gain more unique visitors, which I get it. So during a meeting, I wrote my resignation on the back of the agenda. I got to my car and shot my editor a message saying, hey, we need to talk tomorrow. And he called me because if I say I need to talk, I'm one of those people in the newsroom that I always had something to say and I didn't bite my tongue. And so he gave me a call and he said, hey, what's up? And I said, yo, I'm resigning. I'm putting in 2 weeks. And the next day we had a meeting and he said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'll still be in news. I'm going to think about this community journalism thing. And I said it that way because I didn't necessarily want to tell him exactly what I was doing. And he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do it better than we do it. And if you build the model, I'm going to steal it. And I was just done. That weekend, I wrote a story for Flint Beat. I had owned the domain name for a while. I didn't know what I would do with it. Prior to me working at the newsroom I was in, I'm just one of those people that if I see a domain, I like it, I might buy it. So I had been holding on to it for a couple years. And that weekend, I got a call on my personal phone. They shot me a message on my personal email account. And I wrote a story. I didn't byline it. I just put Flint Beat. When I got into the office that Monday, an editor came up to me and he said, hey, yo, can you check out this story on this Flint Beat thing? So I ended up chasing my own story for the news agency. And 2 weeks after that, I just launched. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't think about it as a business. I was boots on the ground, thinking about things as a journalist would. So I was hitting it like 2 stories or so a day. News was chasing me. My old stomping grounds had to attribute information to me. So I was rocking, right? But looked up maybe a few months in, I was like, well, my savings account is just dwindling here. And I ended up picking up a job. So I've been working and running this thing up until sometime last year, putting it together here and there, doing communications jobs, which I wouldn't advise anybody to do unless you had to do it that way, because I couldn't work Flint Beat and work at where I was working at. I would have been competing with myself. So now we are figuring out what does this look like and how do we sustain in covering an underserved and marginalized community, you know, such as Flint, which is economically depressed, predominantly Black community that, you know, there's news gaps. We're here because there's news gaps. Before we launched, I did talk to community members about what they wanted from news. And I'm a Flint girl, so I felt the same way. And at the time, we just saw crime, sports, and water crisis. That's what the news was, even though we knew there was more going on in the city and more to the city. So I launched with the idea that, yeah, we covered the water crisis, but not nearly as much as other news agencies because we saw it all the time. We do not do sports. And we do cover crime, but we do it a different way. So, for example, there's shootings in Flint. We don't necessarily show up for the yellow tape to say, hey, you know, this young Black man, typically, in Flint was killed on the north side. We'll take a closer look at gun violence, the community impact, and if there's solutions, what other communities are doing in order to make a change happen in Flint. So we look at it that way. And this year is the first year where I've gotten a salary. I've just been working my butt off, doing stuff out of my pocket, you know, as a Black woman and dealing with a number of barriers as it pertains to funding. So this year is where we were invested in pretty nicely from Borealis Philanthropy. We received funding from Facebook, Google this year. And in the past, we've gotten support from Solutions Journalism Network and Lion Publishers. I think that's my story. Oh, this year, and we have a team this year. Like I was literally working this thing by myself, and now we've just hired 2 full-time reporters. I have a managing editor. I have a salesperson. We also have 3 pretty consistent contract writers and also a videographer. And through Report for America, we have a photojournalist this year. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jiquanda.
Cierra, do you want to say next your news journey, and then we'll start to talk to Tiffany?
Yeah. So I came into journalism in a very unconventional way. I am not a journalist. I'm not a writer. I'm not a reporter. I'm a fundraiser. And I joined the team at my organization in 2017. I actually applied to be the executive director of the organization, and they decided to go with somebody else, which is totally fine. I ended up joining our growth team, which was really exciting, and supporting them in their fundraising endeavors. Eventually, somebody else was hired. A few months later, it was determined that, that wasn't the best way forward for the organization, and they weren't a good fit, and they ended up resigning. In them resigning, we needed someone to step up and be in leadership. And that is when I became executive director after our board of directors came back and asked me to move into that role. Unfortunately, in the period that the person immediately preceding me was the executive director, we went through a period of real financial hardship and almost had to close the organization down. So in coming in as executive director, not only was I new in leadership, I was having to turn around an organization. And so that is what I've been doing with my remarkable team for the last 2 years. We've made a lot of strides in that time. It has been challenging. Something that I talk about a lot is, for folks who are a part of the dominant culture, particularly white folks who are interested in starting a media organization, it's very easy for them to get, or let me not say very easy. It is easier for them to get investments in their ideas, and for us. And I'm sure Jiquanda can speak to this as well, folks want to invest in your results. So that means that, like Jiquanda, we were starting with very low capital, but we still had to do a lot with a little. And now that we've been able to do that, we're starting to see folks who want to invest in our work, who want to support what we're doing. We also, are doing news, much like Jiquanda, in an area of the country. We cover the whole South that is very under-resourced. And we have so many challenges that are facing our region, and particularly marginalized folks in our region. And there's a big news and information gap. So, like I said, we're doing a lot with a little, and that's because we have to do a lot with a little, because our folks need us, our people need us to show up for them and make sure that they have what they need. And so I think, a through line that you'll hear as all of us continue to talk is that, we are showing up for our people, and that, we're starting out with very little. And I don't want that to be a deterrent to anyone who's thinking about going on this journey. But it is a reality. What I will say, it has been incredible people like some of the folks on this call who have showed up for me and supported me, and I've been able to lean on them and really look to them to help, build up our organization outside of, the already incredible team that I mentioned. So, if you are starting on this journey, I highly encourage you to reach out to me. I'm sure Jiquanda feels the same way. We're here to help you. We want more folks, especially folks of color, leading news organization.
Okay, thank you. I need to provide some context here. If you're here, it's because you wanted to start a newsroom, or you're interested in a news type of media venture. And we're all glad to see you here. We have Tiffany Cross here who's going to give us a load of wonderful knowledge. And thank you to Cierra and to Jiquanda for starting us off there and telling us about their news journeys. And I'll ask questions throughout to them both. We need to get with Tiffany because it's a news day, and we want to make sure that, we get as much as we can while you're here. Tiffany, can you just give us some background on who you are in terms of how you got to the news, and more importantly, why you're so committed to it, and why you thought this would be a good career for you?
Oh, thank you. I love that question. So I'm Tiffany Cross. I do political commentary across a slew of different networks. And lately I've been filling in as the host of AM Joy, which I'll be doing this weekend. So please, everybody, tune in. We got a lot to talk about this weekend, don't we? And so, for me, Erika, I first of all, I just grew up in this business. My first paid gig as a journalist was when I was 15, and I just never looked back. I always wanted to tell our stories. And growing up when I was in high school, I wanted to be the Brown Murphy Brown. And so I knew I would live in DC. I knew I would work in politics, in the political media, and that's what I've done. But what I found arriving in this space is that it wasn't a very welcoming space for me as a Black woman. I was frequently the only on every show that I worked on, and you know how that feels. And so it wasn't just as an employee. I started, when I came here, I was in Atlanta at CNN, and then they relocated me to cover Capitol Hill with CNN. And it wasn't just the content, but it was how I was treated as an employee. And, I just remember everybody would come in and have a good time and, drop these little cultural quotes and movie lines that were classics for them. And it would be like, a line from Something About Mary or Revenge of the Nerds. This is like, 99, 2000. And I saw those movies, but they weren't classics for me. And I just remember thinking, damn, if I dropped a line from Harlem Nights, would everybody laugh and get my joke? Or Coming to America, will people feel me on that?
Just drop it on them. Yeah, let them deal with it.
Exactly. And then to take that, and these were the people who were deciding what was relevant editorially. And so for me, I just felt like every conversation in the political media centers white people, which seems out of step with the changing demographics of this country. And that's not to say that white people can't ever be centered, but we all need to be centered. And I wanted to start a platform that centered all communities of color, Asian American Pacific Islander, the Latinx community, African Americans, and the Native American community. And when I founded my platform, The Beat DC, within months, we had tens of thousands of readers all across the country. Enthusiastic readers. We were like a lifestyle almost. I would try to send it out by 9 every day. At 9, 10, I would have hundreds of emails like, is the beat coming? I ain't get the beat. I think my email address fell off. It's like, it's coming. I was doing 18-hour days and producing content, what other people do with a full staff and tons of funding. By the time that we were really getting a lot of attention and press, that's just when I went from the control room to the green room, I say, and because cable news bookers used to read our content and they say, hey, you should come on and talk about it. And so the first time I went to CNN, y'all, I acted a fool. I was going back to the people who were shading. I couldn't wait. I was walking in there with my shades, doing my walk of shade, and I just had on my big Dominique Devereaux glasses. Like, yes, can I get a coffee, please? Thank you. It's just ridiculous. But I wish this story ended with, and now I'm a millionaire, but it doesn't, because when it was time to raise funds, so many people, I sat across from, 20-something-year-old white men who felt like, I don't really get what you do or your value, or what problem are you solving? Or there are other outlets that include this content, like, why should we invest in your company? Someone even suggested that I just fold up my operation and go work for Axios, which is another daily newsletter platform. And so I just thought I would do it myself. And I said, you know what? I believe in it. I sold my house, broke the lease on my car, moved to the city, tried to consolidate debt. And I started self-financing The Beat because I was like, in a few months, somebody's going to notice me and I'm about to be rolling in it and I'm going to shade everybody who said no. And I think the first month after I spent $20,000 of my own money and I was like, oh, I got to do these expense reports. No, boo, ain't no expense reports. This is just your money that's gone. It was a very scary feeling. And, I remember that Jay-Z line where he says, those invoices will separate the men from the boys. And it was very true because I was bleeding cash for as long as I could until I was just running out of money. And then all these people, you would try to talk to people about your challenges. And my friends who are loving people, they want to help. They're trying to be helpful. And they would say things like, you should ask Oprah for some money.
Ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, duh. You know what? I'll call her right now.
Let me text her because she ain't texted me back from yesterday anyway. Like, that's not helpful. And so I beat Erika. I cried and cried and cried and cried some more. And, you know, I finally just had to make my peace with it, that this is not what God had for me at this time, which is okay because I got to write this amazing book and do other things. I wouldn't be hosting AM Joy if I were still doing the beat, because it was, you know, it would be too much to do 4 hours of TV a day. So anyway, I write a lot about these experiences in the book and punctuate the point how much money America loses out on. Just the mere fact that the Valley and the Alley do not consider us to be viable businesses that we run, despite by every metric proving that we have success. And many white men were coming in with an idea getting funded. I had a proven concept with a fastly growing, unique reader base, and was still getting denied. And it finally, after a while, I won't say it broke my spirit, but it bruised my spirit to the point where I just felt like, okay, white man, y'all got it, you know? I surrender. So now I'm just, you know, out here trying to build and navigate a different group of white men. So let's pray that something work out with me hosting this show, y'all, but don't say nothing to nobody about it.
Oh, no, we will say something. In fact, we should all, you know, tweet and do our support of Tiffany as she does this show. I think that's wonderful for us to do. By the way, I just want to ask, you know, ask Cierra and Jiquanda as well, but you're talking about your initial, not just initially, but over the whole thing, the fact that you got it off, the fact that you had an idea that was moving, that was building its readership, you still could not get funded. Can you say that that was your biggest obstacle? Then after that, what was your other obstacle that might have come, that might have surprised people? It is surprising that you had, maybe it could be talent or how to keep things. And that I don't want it to always be linked to funding, because I get that overall the funding is a problem, but maybe it could be quality. I don't know. What you let us know. And then Cierra and Jiquanda, please answer the same question.
I would say funding, you know, because that was, it was a capacity issue, and funding solves so many other issues. But the other thing I will tell you honestly is just the know-how. I mean, I just had to figure things out. I had worked and navigated newsrooms for 20 years. So I wasn't new to news, but it was like, oh, but what is the vehicle I use to get this content in inboxes to almost 100,000 people? Because I literally thought, oh, I'm gonna just send it from my Gmail. I was like, it doesn't work like that. And then it was, oh, well, how do I, you know, design this or compress this so it's hitting inboxes? I mean, these are all things that funds will give you this guidance, because they want to make sure that their money is being put to good use. I really literally had to figure all of these things out on my own. And the challenge was, while I was figuring this out, to not let it eat at me, you know, and to not let it make me feel like, oh, this is why nobody will fund me, because everybody else has this knowledge base and I don't want, you know? And then just, honestly, for me, one of the biggest challenges too, so I'd say too, this is the third biggest challenge. The get up and go and delegating. So I realized that nobody's gonna work as hard as you for your own business. Yes. And my days were starting around 5 a.m. and ending around midnight every day. And what was happening, even though I was putting out a great product, what was happening is I was burning myself out. And it was to the detriment of my health. I think I gained like 20 pounds. I had health issues that I didn't take care of. I had family issues that I really wasn't present for. Like, I was obsessed with this one thing because I felt like if I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have parents with trust funds. For many of us, as I'm sure y'all well know, when you make it, you don't have no trust fund, you got a payroll. So I'm taking care of my mother, I'm taking care of family. And so during that time, just the guilt of being so laser focused on this, the sheer exhaustion, which made me an emotional wreck to anybody who was around me. I mean, my poor friends, because they were being so helpful, and they're like, why don't you ask Oprah? But when you say some dumb stuff like that to me off of 2 hours of sleep, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm like, Oprah. They're like, okay, we were just trying to help you. So yeah, I would say those three things. All my friendships are they're in good tact now.
Oh,
But
thank God. Thank God. We don't want you to be alone.
love.
I love you. I love you.
I love you, Erika.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, you know, it's sad to know because I know the beat. I came to you because I was like, who is this young lady? Because you would come often on AM Joy. And I said, who is she? So then, of course, I subscribed to the beat and I got to know you. And then we went out to dinner. And by the way, I want to tell everybody before we go to Cierra and Jiquanda that painting behind you of Shirley Chisholm. Okay, so I see this girlie. Okay, Tiffany was in an airport with that damn painting.
In Texas.
Took pictures of her. This is before we took a picture of her, and I said, I'm gonna go up to her, but I gotta take pictures of her dragging this painting around. And it was brilliant, and that's how I got to know you. Anybody that's in an airport, it was a meet cute moment that you'd see in a Meg Ryan movie.
Yes, I had this big. It was at South by Southwest, and you and I had only met in passing. I was leaving the set, and you were coming on the set, but we hadn't really met. And when you were taking pictures and said, "Oh my, like you are really about the movement, taking this Shirley Chisholm painting on," I was like, "Is this Maxine Shaw talking to me? I'm talking to Maxine Shaw about Shirley Chisholm."
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Listen, Jiquanda, let us know. Tiffany talked a lot about her journey. Obviously, funding is a problem. It's a funding, by the way, across the board, not just in news. They don't fund Black businesses, Black women. That is just the damn truth. So what about that? What beside that was an obstacle that you can at least speak to for the boot camp people to know it's coming?
I hear this conversation all the time about funding, which is very true. You know, I launched a news product on the same day that another newsroom launched a product. And I think they do decent work, but they had money starting out. They had money with nothing to show. They had already been promised, you know, at least 6 figures coming from a local foundation. I can't even get them to fund our solutions work right now. In the tune of maybe about $50,000 to $60,000 a year, not even some 6-figure lump sum. And so we hear that conversation often that we have to show first, right? So I worked my butt off for nearly 3 years, working jobs, and I'm also a single parent. I have 2 children, a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. So it wasn't uncommon to see one of them at a city council meeting, or my son doing, he still does it, Facebook Lives for us. I also launched a youth journalism program because I couldn't find people from this community that look like folk in this community to cover news. And so I started teaching young people here journalism, you know, so that we can fill these newsrooms and look from a different lens. And the only time I've been told that I would fail at this is from white men. In my face, I've been posted on social media, "You're going to fail, you know, it's unfortunate that this will happen to you because it's a great product." But one of the biggest things that I wish I had outside of funding was being able to identify those different roles in the newsroom outside of content, outside of editorial content that can help make me successful, including having somebody that does fundraising or somebody that does community engagement. Because when I kick this off, I'm only thinking content. Like, what does the Flint community, what do they need to read to empower and impact them? Like, what information do they need so far as news, but not necessarily those different roles that are not producing that content, right? And just to hear Cierra say, taking a little and making big moves, that's so an understatement. Like, we literally have little to no money, but we still manage to pull off and have these really great products that's filling in these gaps. You know, I just wish I had somebody sitting on the side, a little business angel saying, "Hey, you know, let's identify these different areas that can help you get to where you need to be sustainable." In 2017, I went to an online news association conference, which I do. That's like a field trip for me. But this is the first time that I went as a publisher, a founder of this thing now called Flint Beat, right? And I just remember sitting in one of the workshops, and I'm really introverted. A lot of us are in this industry. And I was talking to myself, and I kept saying, "Girl, you got to stand up. You know, this is your thing. You have to stand up. And I stood up at one of the most awkward moments. It wasn't time for people to talk, but I was just standing there. And finally, when people could get the mic, I introduced myself and I looked up after this workshop and there was a line of people waiting to talk to me. You know, they had started sending donations from that workshop. And then I realized you have to open your mouth. Like you have to start speaking and you got to get it however you can. As long as it's ethical and you're not violating some code, you have to get it. And so I started to go on Facebook, have the conversation. I felt like I was standing on the corner of Facebook Ave, begging, shaking a cup, you know, and that made me uncomfortable. You know, it's really just a hard journey, knowing what you need to sustain, knowing that what I do is dominated by white men. I cover an underserved and marginalized community, but I am a news influencer in Flint. I have managed to create something that white men do. So there's nothing for me to go to a meeting or people to see me out and a middle-aged white woman can walk up to me and say, hey, I read Flint Beat. I get my news from Flint Beat. That's like nothing for me here. I walked in rooms and white folks have clapped, you know, because they go to us for news. And so it's like, I've really realized that this year, like what I have accomplished, and I often find myself, I say this, like being a chip in the cookie dough, like you go in a room, you're the only brown face, and it happens all the time. And I find myself in rooms with a lot of white men, and I'm still just trying to figure it out and what it looks like, because I too want to have this legacy newsroom. I have goals. I want Flint Beat to be the #1 news source in the city, right? And this doesn't include the other great ideas I think I have to impact this community. So it would be nice just to have that advice, that mentorship of how to make it, instead of being looked at like we can't make it, not being able to look like what we do is valuable, you know, and sometimes looked at as competition. You know, I'm not competition. You're not doing what I'm doing. You know, you can in Flint, like I'm the Flint girl. I'm the news girl. You know, I'm nobody people call for the information. Right, I got it all day long. Yeah. So you can't do this. And I get tired of being overlooked because I know what we're doing is great.
Well, listen, we acknowledge you and salute you because for people who don't know, now you know. Jiquanda Johnson is doing the damn thing. And also, you know, she said something about a business angel, like people need a business angel. You should think of the boot camp here as your business angel, starting with take advantage of this type of thing. It is an 8-week boot camp. You're not going to have to pay for it, but you're going to get valuable information like this so you can avoid and also strengthen yourselves in place. I like that you talked about how difficult it is to talk to money and feel like it's like after a while begging and that type of a thing. God knows, I know, got a witness. Colorful media has been one of those things where it's been a soul-sucking thing sometimes to feel like everybody's looking past you, but we need you. And I think that the value of this, and also, Cierra, we wanted to know from you. By the way, I love, there was somebody who wrote when you first spoke, Jiquanda, about you said, we don't just show up at the yellow tape. They said, you need to coin that. That's your thing. I know that's right. And also, thank you so much for saying that. Cierra, tell us what some obstacle that we need to prepare for.
Yeah, I think for me, it was understanding that the product that we had at Scalawag did not match the needs of our community. So just thinking about like, how are you communicating with the folks that you want to reach? I always tell folks like, my mama does not read newsletters. She is not about to open her email inbox and read a newsletter. So if I'm trying to reach folks like my mama, I need to reach them the way that my mother communicates. And so, you know, I think oftentimes when folks are thinking about starting a newsroom or a media organization, they're looking to do the newsletter, they're looking to do online content. But what are some of the other innovative ways that you can think outside of the box? Because you know your community and you know how folks communicate and you know how they receive news and information. You know, something that we're thinking about at Scalawag that I know other newsrooms like Outlier Media in Detroit are already doing is SMS text message. How can we be texting folks the news? How can we be reaching out to them?
Yeah, I was gonna understand, Sierra, how does your mom get her news? You got to leave it on her voicemail? Like, what's going on?
you know how folks in the South do? They pick up the phone and call each other. So like, could somebody create a newsroom that's based on phone trees?
That's what's up.
Yeah, just like you don't have to be boxed into what the dominant culture, particularly white folks, are doing. You can do something different. And that is a lesson that we have really learned and embraced. Folks of color are innovative people. We've had to be. And so that make sure that you're applying that directly to the work that you're doing and the news that you're producing is definitely something that I would offer to folks.
I think that's brilliant. So we're gonna have some barbershop heralds go out on the street just with an amp.
Absolutely.
With a big old thing, just say, hear ye, 12 o'clock. That would be brilliant, actually. Or MP3 things that people could share. All right, well, listen, Ben is going to talk a little bit about, specifically about the boot camp program. Then we're gonna open it up to questions from people. While we have everyone here, please put them in below and we'll try to get as many questions as we can. So we'll ask any answers to be as, as thoughtfully short as we can, just so we can get to more questions. Go ahead, Ben.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. My name is Ben Arnon. I am Erika's co-founder at Color Farm Media. We really appreciate you all being here today. So the reason that Color Farm and Google News Initiative and Lion Publishers are hosting this important conversation today is because we want to encourage all of you to think about following in the footsteps of these news founders. And Lion Publishers, Annika from Lion Publishers is sick, so she was unable to be here today. But they've developed a really amazing program to help you do that. And, a program that, like Erika said, is sort of like your business angel. It's an 8-week fully remote boot camp. It'll start in September, like next month. We're accepting up to 24 teams of aspiring entrepreneurs who have identified a community's need for better news and want guidance and coaching on how to launch or how to continue to develop a news offering that delivers a solution rooted in journalism. And Google News Initiative thought that this was such a great program that they have helped us to make it free for all 24 teams in this pilot. So there are no fees to apply for this program. And if accepted, there are 0 fees to participate. So it's pretty amazing. So please visit colorfarmmedia.com to learn more about the program and to apply. At colorfarmmedia.com, you'll click on the Google Startups Lab tab, and that'll give you a little information, then that'll send you through to the application. I want to give just a little bit of background on Lion Publishers on behalf of Annika. So Lion Publishers is a journalism association supporting independent online news publishers. Their mission is to help existing and aspiring local news entrepreneurs build and grow financially sustainable small businesses. Lion members are creating the future of local news with independently owned and operated businesses that directly serve their communities. And shout out to both Jiquanda and Cierra are both Lion members, and Lion's vision for the future is equitable, impactful, and sustainable. So the application for this bootcamp is open right now. The deadline is August 17th. So it's coming up in just the next 6 days. So please apply by August 17th. It's called the Google News Initiative Startups Lab Bootcamp. Again, visit colorfarmmedia.com, click on the Google Startups Lab tab. Ultimately, that'll take you through to a site that we'll put into the chat here, which is gnistartupslab.com. It's not easy to say. That's why we're directing you really to colorfarmmedia.com. Click on the Google Startups Lab tab. So again, thank you so much for coming today. We're going to dive into some questions. There have been a lot of good questions coming, and I'm just going to I'm going to look at some of these questions and then throw it out there to Tiffany, Jiquanda, and Cierra, whoever wants to answer, or if all of you want to answer, please do. So the first question that we captured here is, how were you able to reach your audience? What tools did you use to track and record the engagement? And that's for any and all of you. Tiffany, Cierra, or Jiquanda.
I'll hop in before I have to hop off. For us, our content, it was an organic process. I will say we targeted specifically Capitol Hill because we were a niche market. So all of our content intersected politics, policy, the press, and people of color. And so targeting the staff and elected officials on Capitol Hill, because they were especially being ignored in DC. I mean, you consider it as 500 offices, and with 20 staffers each, we paid for a service to get all of their content. And so they, we started here and they got it, and it went like that because they sent it to their parents back in their districts, their friends back in their districts. And so then people in Arizona would email me, people in San Francisco were emailing. And then after a while, I kept noticing all these Parkwood, like so-and-so at Parkwood Entertainment, so-and-so at Parkwood Entertainment. I'm like, who is this that's opening and clicking on everything? Do y'all know what Parkwood Entertainment is?
No.
It is Beyonce's company. In my mind, I'm like, is B reading me every morning? It was her team, but still, I was like, maybe around the water cooler, they were talking and they're like, hey, B, did you read the Beat this morning? And she's like, what? Who? And they're like, oh, let me tell you about it. I don't know. But it was like such a big boost for me because I was like, man, super cool people are reading it. When I cried after we went bankrupt, after I went bankrupt, I was like, I'm going to write the Parkwood people. I swear I'm down, y'all. I'm just drinking a lot of lemonade these days. I'm back. I will be back. So anyway, that's how we got our content into the hands of the right people.
Listen, Ben, ask her one more question so we can let Tiffany go. I know she's doing double duty. We really appreciate you coming out, Tiffany. There's no doubt.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yes, Ben will ask you one more question for you. You have to, do your Kamala thing. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. No, so here's a question that came in. It actually said, to Tiffany, huge fan of you and your amazing voice. And then any suggestions on how to build your audience base, which we just covered. But then Facebook has a bunch of money for Black content creators available, for example, and you need 10,000 followers on Facebook and Instagram each to even qualify. Any other suggestions, I guess, about building an audience base using social media, using other tools?
Yeah, so people ask me this question. We spent money. Like I did promote and advertise on Facebook and then later Instagram. I never paid to advertise on Twitter. But honestly, I had been in this space for 20 years, so I had built up a database to get other people to be my ambassadors. Now, I will say the young women with the skim, who we were growing at the same speed at the skim, by the way, and these chicks got a whole lot of money. I didn't get a fraction of it, but the skim got like Oprah to retweet them, and they got Hoda Kotb to like they had these celebrities retweeting them. And that certainly any validator, I think, whatever community you're trying to reach. I had members of Congress retweeting us, which gave us some level of trust and credibility with our readers. But also I would say I wrote the content and I wrote in a very accessible, digestible way. And ultimately that was the thing that kept people engaged. It eliminated this gap between the people and politics. And all of a sudden, none of this stuff that happens in the Beltway seems so complex that they didn't understand it. So quite frankly, even though I had people retweeting and other people have had like celebrity validators, it was the content. People felt like, I don't even know people, but people feel like when people read my book, they're like, oh my God, I'm reading this in your voice. Or like people can tell when I'm writing something, they're like, why did I just read this out loud in Tiffany Cross's voice? I search myself on Twitter, and that's what I see people say sometimes. So I think it's a combination of things. But I've never, honestly, I never really have tried to build a brand for myself. I've always been focused on building community, as my friend Angela says. And I think when that was my focus, that was the biggest growth.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate your honesty, and more importantly, we will be watching you on AM Joy. We will be tweeting more Tiffany Cross.
Thank you.
Let's make sure we do that, and also watching what you're doing, and more importantly, supporting each other, because you say it's a community. It takes a village. It's going to take a nation to get us out of that mess. So let's do it.
Okay. Thank you. And if y'all tweet me, tag MSNBC and MSNBC PR, but don't tell them I said that. And hashtag crosstalk.
Okay, crosstalk. That's the show you're gonna build.
Well, that's what I always, people, when I'm on TV, people said it. I didn't come up with it. Twitter came up with it. And so I just leaned in. I was like, okay, cool, crosstalk. And it starts to trend when I host. So I do hashtag AMJoy, hashtag crosstalk, and people tweet about it.
Thank you. We now know. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, guys. So I'll see y'all this weekend if you tune in. And thank you so much, Erika and Ben. This was so great. And good luck to everybody with all your platforms. I look forward to supporting all you guys.
Thank you, Tiffany.
You. All right.
So
thank you.
So for everyone, we've still got 13 minutes. Tiffany just has to jump because of the breaking news. And I should mention also that Erin Haynes sends her best. She also was planning to be here, but obviously this is huge VP news. So next question up for Jiquanda and Cierra. Someone asked, how do we find a way to bring HBCU students majoring in media disciplines into this thought process?
That's a good question. I was thinking about HBCUs yesterday because our newsroom started to offer fellowships and whatnot at one point. And how do we bring them into our newsrooms to cover these communities and have these type of conversations that Cierra and I are privileged enough to have, because everyone, they can't, right, in different newsrooms. And I think that we just need to better communicate and know about each other and have those conversations so that we can create these dialogues across the board. What I do find is hard is that me being a startup, 3 years new, and the value. So I find young people that they see more value in legacy newsrooms. They're trying to work for the New York Times or the Washington Post, and they don't see the value in what I do as a nonpartisan and independent newsroom. We just brought on 2 people recently who they happen not to be Black. We had a hard time getting Black people to apply for our position in our newsrooms. And when they came on board and they found out some of the partnerships that we had, they were surprised. They just really wanted to cover a community like Flint. And they had looked at our website and they wanted to do that news. But we have partnerships with like the Center for Public Integrity. We're working on something right now with the trace.org, which covers gun violence throughout the nation, right? We work with Solutions Journalism Network. So we have all these really, really strong partnerships that we do to expose writers to other platforms and give them a voice nationally. So their bylines are national. Like even my students, they've been recognized for their work. One of them walked across the stage at ONA and they got an award for work that they did with the Trace. So, and they're high schoolers. And so I think that we would engage these conversations. We just need to better communicate with each other. And you all need to teach that the work that we do is valuable. That the work that these independent newsrooms started by people of color, that we're kicking ass too. Instead of always giving examples from the Washington Post or the New York Times, don't let us be an afterthought. Let's talk about it.
I think really quick, I'll add that I am in the process of visioning a way to move Scalawag from just being a newsroom to also being a media lab. And so would love to keep y'all informed as we go through that process. We definitely want to be a place, Scalawag is we're a team of very young folks, and we have been able to do some pretty remarkable things and be very hands-on in a way that would not be true if we were all working in larger newsrooms or in legacy media. And so we want to give that opportunity to other folks so that, whether they want to start their own thing or if they do want to join a larger organization, they can at least join and come in at a higher level than they would if they were coming in straight out of college or without being able to really have that experience building and growing a newsroom. So would love to keep y'all looped in on that. I think it's a great way for folks to, would be a great way for folks graduating from HBCUs to really get training and support and development. And, you know, there's a ton of HBCUs in the South, so I'm particularly invested in that.
And I'll just mention there's some great resources being plugged into the chat here. Someone just wrote
Amazing resources.
Maynard
Oh,
Institute, Emma Bowen Foundation. So check the chat, a lot of good resources.
And
Cierra, I'm gonna
all sorts of good stuff.
Yep, and Cierra, I'm gonna ask the next question to you as well. This is from someone who mentioned that they were an introvert. So they said, as someone who's an introvert and all and sort of against boasting on social media, how do you tell people about your craft and how well do you and how well you do it? So what are some other ways of getting the word out?
You're talking to the wrong one. I'm a 100% extrovert, so I
So
cannot
Jiquanda is an introvert, so let her answer it then.
Yes, so
She
Jiquanda, go ahead.
Okay, I'm working too. I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to be, but we had some sex trafficking thing that popped off today.
We understand.
That turned out not to be a sex trafficking thing, but it was a robbery, which I don't, you know. So with me, I still have a hard time with it. I neglect to tell my story often. I'm so used to telling other people's stories. I just decided that I need to hire somebody to help me do it. So I've reached out to a couple people recently, like, hey, you know, let's sit down and talk so I can tell you what I'm thinking that I need to tell people that I neglect to tell folk. One of my mentors, she fusses at me all the time because I don't. Usually for me, it's one of those moments where like, I'm just not scripted, like talking to you now, like I'm never scripted. Or I'm in a room just having a conversation about the work we do. Or I'm pissed off about money in the community. They keep coming at me, asking me to do stuff, but they're not investing in us. So I pick up a bullhorn and I do go on Facebook and say, hey, yeah, I get it, but you all are not investing in this. And if you want this to work, hit that donate button on flintbeat.com. It's just that easy. So I just really struggle with it. And I do think it's doing me a disservice. And also understanding the value of the work I do. I have a tendency to undervalue it. I don't know why, it's my calling. God blessed me with this to be able to do news because I wanted to be an accountant, but I'm in journalism. How the hell did that happen? So understanding the value enough to talk about it and say, this is what we do. And be very, very, very secure in it and wear the S on my chest. Like, you need this, we're doing it, you should invest in it. And I worked my butt off to get us here. And I remember one time telling a reader, he called me and he saw me driving down the street and he's like, hey, what are you chasing? And I was like, the welfare office, because I ain't got no money and I'm getting ready to go get these food stamps so I can feed my kids. And so it's being able to have those really candid conversations about what's going on, how you're accomplishing what you're doing. I just find it to be hard, you know, but I'm getting better at it. I'm talking to you all, you know, I've turned down panels before and I knew this might be a big one. Are y'all in my business? But
making the exception.
Yeah, so it's hard for me. And it's a journey that I have to take and I have to do if I want this thing to sustain, if I want it to be successful, and if I want others like me to be successful. When I started this, my goal was to launch publications in areas, Black areas, cover people that look like me. And then I noticed like there's this drought in news. And I call it a content drought because in Flint, we have 3 TV stations, a legacy newsroom, and some other niche publications. And so there's not a news drought. Like, they're producing news all the time, but they're usually grabbing the low-hanging fruit. And so I call it a content drought. And I want others to do this. I want other people to go in these communities and be able to launch these newsrooms to fill those news gaps. And so I have to speak for the greater good of this. And where my heart is with journalism just in general, you know, but again, it's hard for me personally, you know, but I do it the best I can, the best I know how. And now I'm willing to have somebody else help me shape it. That's another thing when I talked about identifying roles and things you need, knowing that I need a communications person or a PR person that can help me shape my story and tell my story so that people will invest in us, so people will understand what we're doing and see the value and help support us in that way.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Jiquanda.
Can
We're
I
gonna,
just say real quick to people who are introverts, because you guys wouldn't believe it, but I kind of am. I've taught myself to build the muscle, and now I'm a heavyweight champion of talking. But I find that when I link my future ambitions to other people and community and to the purpose of it, then I speak up just fine. I have no problem speaking up when it's time to get in good trouble. I'm all mouth, because I'm not thinking of myself. I'm not thinking of any protection or any sort of. So ask yourself why you're in the space, and then speak for those people. You are their voice. You're amplifying the needs of that community, and then therefore you'll find all sorts of strength and powers you didn't know. Just like Jiquanda ultimately is speaking for not only Flint, but she's become a conduit to other people to understand Flint better. So we thank you for what you've done. These two wonderful, beautiful Black women have been doing wonderful work. So as Tiffany Cross, Aaron Haynes, this program is open to everyone. We wanted to make sure at Color Farm that we got the message out to so many of the people who miss these opportunities. And we hope that you have been inspired and also, balancing it with real information that it may be scary, it may be hard, but it's certainly worth it. As you can see, we're glad that they're there at Scalawag and also in Flint. So thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you all for coming today, and thank you, Cierra and Jiquanda, for being so honest and authentic. A lot of people wrote that in the chat. There was a great question before about specifics about the boot camp. Someone asked some questions, so I just wanted to make sure everyone sees that Philip actually answered that in the chat to everyone. So someone had asked about the minimum time required. He said minimum time required to invest is 8 hours per week. It can be done part-time. And then he also, there's also a note in here, the week-by-week breakdown of the boot camp and what topics it covers are all online. And he put the website. Again, you can get to that. It's gnistartupslab.com. You can get there, if you forget that, you can get there through colorfarmmedia.com. Just click on Google Startup Labs. Last question that we'll do here, because this came in a couple of times from folks. I'll hand this to Cierra so that you have the last question is, what are your thoughts about crowdfunding?
Yeah, so Scalawag actually started via crowdfunding. We started on Kickstarter, and I think that crowdfunding is an incredible way to support your organization, especially if you're doing work with marginalized communities, just because, that's grassroots fundraising is ultimately what crowdfunding is. That said, I would definitely try to go after larger investments, just because, you like we've said, you can do a lot with a little, but you could also do a lot with a lot, and probably sleep better at night. So if you do have the opportunity to bring in larger dollars, I would say definitely go that route. It doesn't have to be an either or, but yes, tons and tons of news organizations have started via Kickstarter or via a crowdfunding website. And so if you want support or you want to know more about how that might work, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Cierra. This was so great, everyone. Thank you for coming. So two reminders, August 17th, that's coming up. It's this Monday. That is the deadline to apply. So go to colorfarmmedia.com, click on Google Startups Lab. If you want to apply, we definitely want to see your application. Please get it in. And then also, there's actually an info session coming up this Thursday, August 13th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Before we click off of here, we'll give you, we'll hold this for about 30 seconds because you can see, if you scroll back on the chat a little bit, Philip put a link to the Q&A session that links you right to the Zoom registration page. So if you want more, that'll be real specific, nuts and bolts about the program. Again, a lot of that is on the website as well. Erika, I'm going to hand off to you while people
Thank
are going
you.
back through the chat. I'm going to hand off to you to end us.
It's just thank you to my niece who even tuned in Philly. Thank you to the beautiful Jiquanda, to Cierra. Thank you so much. If anything, we've learned that we need to support each other and support differently, news differently, and get and reach out and subscribe, and even subscribe and pay for those news services that are there, and see how we can contribute. We also can give them tips. If you have unique news stories that you think would be valuable to them, give them those tips. Let them win those Pulitzer Prizes. Let's make sure we feed them the information that may change things for us on the ground. And then also for all of you people who are in journalism and writing and also thinking about this as an entrepreneur type of thing, to try it. Thank you so much for being there. We really are going to re-landscape the news business, but we'll do it very slowly, and it starts now. Reverend Barber likes to say, he's a friend, he's from the Poor People's Campaign, that this is the third Reconstruction. And if it is, we need new architects. We need new people to come to the fore. Women, white, male, gay, Black, tall, young, short, all these people. There's drones. There's all sorts of interesting ways to tell stories, to ways to look at the world. And we just want to thank you so much. And Philip Smith, we want to thank you. Ben and I met him in Philadelphia, and he gave us the opportunity to speak to you today. He's the person going around doing these trainings and telling people, and more importantly, sharing his knowledge and having the community be built from the ground up. And thank you so much, Philip Smith, because you're a good man. And I'm dedicating more of my life to being good for goodness sake. That's what it's about. Like John Lewis, good trouble. It is, that's the highest compliment you can give somebody who's doing good for goodness sake, and that's a good man. So thank you, Philip Smith. Thank you so much for having this opportunity, letting us have this opportunity. And we're going to do this together, y'all. I'll see you on the Glow Road. How about that? Woo! Sign up. It's going to be great.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go see what's going on with Kamala.